Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Golden's ADA Transition Plan presentation. We're happy to have you join us and look forward to talking to you more about what we're up to. I'm Ann Byerly. I'm the Public Works Director. I'm also the ADA Coordinator. And with me today, we have JP Palmieri, who's our Facilities Maintenance Manager. We have missing from our group today Chad Meinert, who's Park, Cemetery, and Forestry Manager. He's homesick. We do have Joe Purr, the City Engineer, Clarissa Cottrell, who's our Digital Content Specialist, and Emily Gideon, who's our Community Engagement and Communications Manager, who's going to help us kind of bring this all together. Just as a starting point, just want to be clear that the City of Golden is committed to ensuring access to all city programs, activities, and services for everybody, regardless of their abilities. Today on our agenda, we want to do a quick review of ADA overall, the Americans with Disability Act, talk about the self-evaluation and transition plan that we've prepared, and give you an overview of what we found during our self-evaluation, what we found in our buildings, in our parks, in our rights-of-way, and on the website, and then talk a little bit about what the next steps will look like. The ADA is a civil rights law, and in short, the purpose of the law is to make sure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. And as a public entity operating public spaces, the City of Golden has an obligation to make sure that all of our facilities and programs are available to people of all abilities. There's two pieces of the ADA Act that we want to talk about tonight. The self-evaluation and the transition plan. The self-evaluation is essentially looking at what you've got and evaluating it, identifying areas where there are barriers to compliance or access, and areas that where you're not in compliance with what we need to be doing. The transition plan takes the information you get in a self-evaluation plan and develops specific strategies to bring everything that we do, all of our policies and practices, all of our facilities and programs into compliance. The self-evaluation process for us has been kind of a multi-stepped one. In general, want to note that we brought in a consultant, a company called Meeting the Challenge out of Colorado Springs. They are specialists in ADA and ADA compliance, and they came and evaluated our facilities, our parks, and our programs, and our policies, and our website to help us get our arms around what was going on. They did data collection at, like I said, at our facilities and our parks. They looked at our website. They tested our website to see how well it worked, and we also collected data in the rights-of-way, which is really a fancy way, I guess, an engineering way of saying our sidewalks. After they collected the data, they did a compliance analysis and provided us with a whole bunch of information about things and ways that we could do things better. And we have taken all of that information, that analysis and all of that data, and we have created a draft transition plan. Our transition plan has been long in development, which means that if you go to the Guiding Golden to take a look at it, you'll find an appendix that's part of it that already shows you things that we've fixed post-evaluation as we've been working on this transition plan. And to be clear, the transition plan is looking at the next 3 years or so of what we can accomplish. There's likely to be more to do when we get done there. But we have the transition plan. It's been developed. It's out there and available for people to take a look at. And when people have an opportunity to take a look at it, if they have thoughts about it, if they have ideas about where we should be doing things differently or ways we should be prioritizing differently, we'd like to hear about it. And then we will take those comments and that information, create a final transition plan that we will take to council for adoption. So, I kind of went through this, huh? But the transition plan has to have a summary of the barriers that limit accessibility. It has to describe the changes that are planned to provide access. It has to specify a schedule for implementation, and it has to indicate who's responsible for implementation of the plan. And in this case, as the ADA coordinator, that's me. Public comment must also be solicited, and really that's the purpose for us here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to JP, who's going to cover for Chad, and we'll talk about parks and facilities.
Good evening. I'm JP, and like Ann said, I'm covering for Chad tonight. So slide 1 shows all the different parks that were assessed during this analysis by meeting the challenge. In total, there were 18 parks that got assessed through this. Slide 2 is a couple photos of examples. First one, items mounted too high. The next one would be on the top right would be vertical change in a walkway, things that need to be addressed. Bottom left there is running slope, and then bottom right would be position of grad bars and such. And these are just a couple examples of things we'll be taking care of over the next few years. So the prioritization schedule, things are being prioritized by the greatest benefit and impact to the largest number of people, as you can see by this. It's also thinking of fund availability and long-term capital improvement forecasts will affect this as well. Resource availability, as well as public input, which is extremely important during the prioritization schedule. One thing we'd like to point out is the upcoming projects we have. The nice thing about all new projects is it brings facilities up to current ADA standards. So things like the Park Lions Ball Field and Astor House, restroom renovations will bring all of that into ADA compliance, as well as the Ulysses Sports Field update. It's a good thing to see. And then Gramps Park parking lot reconstruction will address park access deficiencies as well. Moving on to facilities, which is my background. The facilities that were looked at were 18 in total as well. They looked at both public facilities and back of the house facilities, not accessed by the public as well. Next one, photo examples here go from top left, counter heights, and top right to dispenser heights that we're seeing and out of compliance. Bottom left would be issues like no pull handles on doors, and then bottom right, the sign mounting both in the wrong location and a little too high. Implementation schedule for facilities is basically the same as parks. We used three priority factors to judge what we wanted to do. Priority 1 would be public-facing buildings such as the Golden Community Center and City Hall. Priority 2 would be public safety facilities such as PD and fire. Priority 3 would be rest of the facilities with no public access. Many things will affect the schedule, as you can see: public input, fund availability, and facility location and use. So, and the big thing to note is that schedule and priority will change based on any of the factors listed above. At this point, I'll pass it on to Joe.
All right, good evening. I'm Joe Poor, city engineer. I'm in charge of the rights-of-way, which, as Ann said, was a sort of a fancy way of talking about all the streets and sidewalks. Worthy of note is that the rules in the right-of-way are different than for facilities and parks. It's something called PROWAG, Public Rights-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. They are not yet regulatory. We had some draft rules issued in 2011, and so everything I'm going to talk about is sort of based on those draft rules. But PROWAG is primarily focused on accessibility within the rights-of-way. That generally means sidewalks. There are some considerations and regulations around parking spaces within the public right-of-way as well. And what PROWAG is really looking at is the width, the cross slope, and the running slope of our sidewalks. So we've done some data collection. and generated this map. Anything that is highlighted in pink is compliant. Anything that is gray is non-compliant. So we have quite a lot of work to do, as evidenced in these graphs, largely non-compliant for sidewalks within the public rights-of-way. So quite a lot of work to do, and not as easy to address as one might think. Simply widening a sidewalk, either moving into the street or out of the street, tends to lift up the back of the sidewalk. And so anywhere that anyone is tied in, a walkway or landscaping or a tree or whatever it is, at the back of the walk, we have to sort of accommodate that and address it. And that tends to make things very expensive. Generally, what we would do is, if we can't simply address all of those individual issues by raising the back of sidewalk, we would have to come in and rebuild the road, lower everything so that the new back of sidewalk is at the existing sidewalk elevation. It's a lot of words. Given that amount of work, well, we've estimated that the cost of that work is around $50 million. And given that rather large outlay, we've given ourselves a timeline of 50 years to accomplish that. That is a long time. We are going to look to the Bike and Ped Master Plan, which is currently being drafted, to sort of help us with prioritization of these works, and really just sort of look to, like facilities and parks, just look to where the demand is to address initially. And with that, I'll turn it over to Clarissa.
Thanks. I'm Clarissa. I'm the I'm the digital content specialist. Sorry, my title has changed many times over the years. So yeah, in addition to making the physical spaces of our city-owned and maintained properties accessible, we're also concerned with the accessibility of our digital spaces. So about a quarter of the population has some sort of disability, and this can be mobility issues and physical disabilities, of course, but also this includes vision impairments, which includes being colorblind, loss of hearing, and cognitive function. So any one of these can prevent someone from accessing digital services and information from a website that's not designed with accessibility in mind in the first place. Just a couple of examples, real-world examples. Let's say someone with a vision impairment wants to wants to find out how much of a city budget is used on, let's say, public safety. So they find a report, they go to the report, but that information is in a pie chart. And let's say that pie chart, the information on that pie chart is not written out elsewhere in the report. That person is effectively barred from accessing that information. So we need to make sure that we have that information available to their screen reader, which is how this particular person with a vision impairment is accessing information on the website. Let's say another example, maybe someone who's colorblind wants to know what route they should use to avoid road work. So they look at a map that has a detour map detailed, but that detour is just in a color that they can't differentiate between the other colors on the map. So in that case, we would want to have some other signifier to tell them what kind of where they should go for the detour route. So there are all sorts of things on the websites, and the City of Golden maintains about 10 websites, more or less. But in addition to that, we also have a lot of third-party vendors that we provide services through, and so we also need to make those available to people who have different disabilities. Unfortunately, there's no universal app or plugin that we can use. I wish there were, but because there are so many different pieces to this puzzle, we have to attend to each issue individually. There is, although there's no universal app, there is an internationally used standard that was developed by the World Wide Web Consortium Web Accessibility Initiative, and they've developed a set of Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, we call them, and these were established to set criteria that we can meet, and they provide a map, basically, for finding and remediating accessibility issues. So with our digital accessibility, in addition to this ADA transition plan, we also, in 2021, Governor Polis passed the Colorado House Bill 211110, which mandates that all state and local government digital properties must comply with the most recent WCAG guidelines, which I think at this point is 2.1. But they must comply by July 1st, 2024. So our schedule is set for us. Luckily, we've been working on this for a while. And one of the big things that we're doing this year is we'll be completely redesigning our website. You can go ahead. Thanks. So we'll be completely redesigning our city website. But we'll also be taking a look at all the other websites that the city manages. So we have to look at the WCAG compliance, as well as our social media platforms in 4 different areas. So there's technical compliance, and that's where the website redesign will really help, because this involves the code in the background that you can't see. And it'll also allow us to look at our color contrast, and allow us to look at our navigation and just the content on the website, including links and et cetera. So the next step is, or the other area, the next area is remediation of existing content. This is everything like PDFs. We have a ton of PDFs on our website. And we have to go through each of those and make sure that they are all accessible. It also includes adding alternative text to all of the images that we have, and make sure all our video recordings have captions. I will say that the person who manages our social media platforms has been really great. He's been going back and making sure there's alternative text on all of our social media images. So we are in the process of remediating now. Then there's also training city staff. There needs to be an initial training and an ongoing training. So once we do have accessible digital content, then we keep maintaining that content, since content changes, So we need to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then there's also, we have to look at those third-party vendors and just make sure that that they are WCAG compliant as well. That will require talking to them and possibly negotiating, and worst case scenario, finding alternative vendors. So we do anticipate complete implementation of the plan by July 1st, 2024. So stay tuned.
All right. I'm Emily Gideon. I am the Communications and Community Engagement Manager. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about just what comes next with the ADA transition plan for the City of Golden, and ways that as a community member in Golden, you can get involved and help share feedback to ensure that our facilities, parks, programs are all accessible to everyone who wants to live, work, and play in Golden. So important next steps. First of all, we have this full transition plan and all appendices up on Guiding Golden right now. It's at guidinggolden.com/ADA transition-plan. You can go to guidinggolden.com if you don't, if you're just listening online, you can go online to guidinggolden.com and search for ADA transition plan, and it should actually be up on the front main page, so you can find it right there on the front page of Guiding Golden. The transition plan also takes a look at some of the self-evaluation and assessment that some of my colleagues have talked about tonight. We are asking for any feedback on Guiding Golden on this ADA transition plan document by March 3rd. So please take a look and share any feedback or anything that you see that maybe we're missing in the plan. Staff is going to revise that transition plan based on some of those comments and feedback, and take that transition plan, the ADA transition plan, to be presented to City Council at their March 28th regular business meeting. And as Joe mentioned, especially on the issues of right-of-way and pedestrian and other accessibility issues, another great opportunity to get involved and share your feedback on being able to use city sidewalks, streets, is to comment on the right-of-way through the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. You can also find that on Guiding Golden right now, and that is a long ongoing process to ensure that folks feel safe biking, walking, rolling, any host of ways that they want to get around the city of Golden. We're looking for feedback on that. So go ahead and go to Guiding Golden, and please take a look at our ADA transition plan there. Get your feedback and questions in by March 3rd, and staff will review them and include some of the responses and considerations in an additional appendix that will be presented in full. The ADA transition plan will be presented in full to council on March 28th. And with that, barring any additional comments from my colleagues, I think we will wrap up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.